Hello, welcome to my channel, Heavenly Ever Afterthoughts. My name's Amy, and this channel we are looking at the Netflix show Heavenly Ever After, which is fairly new to Netflix. It came out last spring. It's a 2025 series from Korea, and I loved it so much that I thought I would make a YouTube channel on it. So on this channel, we're going to be going over every episode of Heavenly Ever After and talking about some of the themes of the show and some other things about the show. Please consider subscribing to the channel and liking the video. And welcome back to anyone who is not new to the channel. This is the video on episode 2 of Heavenly Ever After. So I think this is a better episode than episode 1. So I'm just going to go over the synopsis of what happened in the episode, and then I'm going to have some discussion questions that I'm going to answer, and hopefully some other people answer. Oh, here's my baby. This is Chipper the pug. So he's going to join us for the video. He's going to join us for this video. I wonder how you would look in a human form. We're going to talk about that later too. All right, let's get started. Let me put this over here. All right, let's get started. Episode 2 is much better than episode 1 because they're in the afterlife, which I think is the most interesting part of the show. So, when we left off, Hae-suk had just reunited with her husband, Nak-jun, and he doesn't recognize her because she's 80 and he's 30. And pretty much, I would say 99% of the people who are in heaven have chosen to appear as a young person, except for Hae-suk, who said she wanted to appear 80. And the reason that she did that is because when they were alive, her husband Nak-jun said that he thought she was the most beautiful at 80 years old because it reflected all the years they were together. So she thought he was going to appear 80 also. And then, no. But no, he chose to be 30 and she is now 80. So she shows up at the house where he is set up for her to come. He's waiting for her because he died first. And it's a very funny scene because she kind of recognizes that she made a mistake. He's kind of like taken aback that she's so old. Okay, so that's where episode 2 starts. So they're still outside and he's kind of confused, like why does she look old? He thinks it's a mistake at this point. He doesn't realize she picked 80. He thinks that they accidentally made her 80. So he thinks it's like something he can fix. It's not, because she picked 80. And she explains to him later in the episode why she picked 80. They're reuniting, and then he says, oh my gosh, I want to take you to the park. So he takes her to the park because he wants to show her that he can now run and jump because he was paralyzed for most of their marriage. It's kind of a touching moment where he's like running and jumping and, having a good time. And she's sitting there and she's kind of remembering how he used to wish that he could do that when he was, after the accident. He's so thrilled that he can show her that, look, he's not paralyzed anymore. And that is a touching scene. At the end, he gives her a piggyback ride. But it is funny because, she has this device that speaks her thoughts. Because people who look older have to carry this device around. Again, in my last episode, I talked about why I don't like that. So he's like, look, we're husband and wife again. And then her inner conscience is saying more like mother and son. He's like, what'd you say? And so she's really not into it because she kind of feels weird, like everyone's looking at her because she's so old. Here she is getting a piggyback ride from this 30-year-old. So they go back to the house. He wants to show her the house that he designed for her. And it's a beautiful house. She notices all of this like sports equipment in the corner. And then he explains that obviously he thought she was going to be young. Of course, now in the afterlife, he wants to go hiking and do all these outdoor activities with her. But she's 80. What's heaven like? Because so far we've really just not seen much of heaven other than there's a park and like a house. Nak-jun tells her that she has to go to orientation the next day. And then she finds out later that he has a job, but he's going to drop her off at orientation and he's going to meet her after orientation. They're getting ready to go to bed, and he's expecting to sleep in the bed with her because they're married. She's not having it. When they were married, because he was injured, they didn't sleep in the same bed for years. So she tells him, "Oh, I'm not used to sleeping in the bed with you. I'm used to sleeping by myself." So he lets her have the bedroom and he sleeps on the couch. So it's kind of sad that they've been, apart so long, but I can understand how if you're 80 years old, you don't want to sleep with a 30-year-old. Like, that's weird. Your 80-year-old body sleeping with your husband who's 30, it's icky. So I can understand why she doesn't want to be anything to do with the same bed. But I think he was hoping that they would connect that way. But she's not going to do that. Okay, so the next day, she gets dressed. They're going to go to orientation. That's when she finds out that Nak-jun has a job. He has like a uniform on. And they're going to the Heaven Support Center. And it's like the headquarters for Heaven. So she's going in there with him, and there's a man that's coming down the escalator, and he's glowing. And she thinks it's God. So she's so excited, and her husband's trying to tell her, no, it's not God. And she finds out, who is he? He is the president of the Heaven Support Center, which honestly, I still think he's God. I know that they said he's just the president and he glows because all the higher up people glow, but I still secretly think he is God, that he does represent God, but that's just me. What we find out in the orientation is that in this story, heaven is not your final destination. Heaven is kind of like a waiting area. And you also find out that heaven is not necessarily guaranteed to you, that if you make mistakes in heaven and you do sins in heaven, you can be sent to hell still. So just because you made it to heaven doesn't mean you've escaped hell. So you have to watch your P's and Q's. And and there's a funny part where he kind of goes over what you can and can't do in heaven. And I thought that was very interesting, that the idea that heaven is not he says heaven's not a reward. It is merely a stage in existence. And that's what you're going to find out in the story, which I thought was a very interesting take. It's not like your final destination. All right, so then she comes out for lunch, and her husband's standing there waiting for her, and he's so excited to see her. I love the acting in Heavenly Ever After. I love how the actor that plays Nak-jun looks at Hae-suk with love, and he's always so excited to see her and so supportive of her. It's very cute. So he takes her to lunch, and she finds out that everybody has kind of like karma points that you use to buy lunch, and you can have anything you want in the world, in the universe, to eat. So she picks their first meal that they had when they went out to eat, when they were on a date. All right, so that was her first day at orientation, where she kind of learned what's happening. That night, she's sleeping alone again in her room, and she can hear Young Ye, her adopted daughter on Earth, crying. And it's very upsetting to her. And Young Ye can't get over the fact that her mother is gone, her adopted mother, who she calls the boss. And it flashes back to the story of how Young Ye was adopted. And this is where you learn about how Young Ye was the daughter of one of the customers of Hae-suk. He had borrowed money from her, and he was a drunk and he couldn't pay back. That's how she meets Young Ye, and then she realizes Young Ye is being physically attacked by her father in drunken rages, that she's not really being properly taken care of. She doesn't have food. You find out how she adopts Young Ye is she makes a deal with the father that his debt will be wiped away if he signs over rights to his daughter to her, and he does. And that's how she gets custody of Young Ye, who I would say is about 6 years old at the time. And so Young Ye, you understand why Young Ye is so sad that Hae-suk is gone, because this was a woman who saved her from a very terrible situation. So you really feel her pain. All right, so it's the next day. She has to go back to orientation. And again, her husband drops her off, and he's like, "You've got this." It's so cute. She sees this group of people. Some of them are old like her. And she's like, "Oh, my people. There's other old people here." So she follows them into a room where they're all being gathered together by the staff. They're acting all weird. They're sniffing her, and one keeps giving her a ball. She eventually realizes they're dogs. They're dogs in the form of humans. And she asks this old woman, "Oh, why did you pick an old age to appear?" And the old woman says, "Oh, well, my master remembered me better when I was older, so that's why I wanted to appear older. And she's like, your master, that's a weird thing to call your husband. And then she realizes, oh, it's a dog. So this was the scene that I showed you before. The saddest scene of the movie is where it's sad, but it's happy, where dogs are reunited with their former owners who have passed away. And it's just such a sweet scene. And it always makes me cry every time I watch it. And so then she sees them reunite. And then it's sad that 3 stray dogs don't have anyone to reunite with. And they're kind of upset. That I like these side stories that they do. Some of them are very touching and very sad. And they're throughout the story. I'm not going to go over all of them here, but there are every single episode has all these sad or poignant side stories that are very interesting. Where she finally tells her husband why she's 80, what he said to her, and he doesn't even remember saying that to her. And she's like, you're the reason why I look 80, because you said I was the most beautiful at 80. So how could you be 30? You should have picked 80. And then he feels bad, and he realizes what he said. So he's like, I'm going to take care of it. We're going to go demand that the problem is fixed. Well, that doesn't go well. And this is one of the things you'll learn in the story, is that heaven is a big bureaucracy, and there are rules, and the rules don't change. So the rule was that whatever age you picked in heaven is how you're going to appear in heaven. And you can't go back and change that. And they told her that in the beginning. So she picked 80. And so even though Nak-jun is trying to stand up for her and be like, no, it's a mistake, they're like, no, like she's going to be 8. She picked 80. You realize now she's going to be 80. And then she suggests, well, maybe he could be older. Maybe he could be 80. And he's not too thrilled about that. But then he's like, okay. But they're like, no, you can't do either. You can't change your age. You can't go from 30 to 80. You can't go from 80 to 30. So they're stuck in their ages, unfortunately. All right, so let's go back to Young Ye for a minute. Young Ye is on Earth. She's very upset that she's all alone. She doesn't have her adopted family. And she's on a bus, and she sees a psychic. Like a psychic store. So she gets off the bus, she goes to the psychic, and the psychic tells her that Heisuk is stuck in the afterlife and she can't find her way and she needs help. And so in her emotional state, Young Ye runs into the street, and then you hear a car accident. So she throws herself in front of a bus or something. Okay, and that's where it ends. And then we're going to pick up with that story in episode 3, okay? The last scene of episode 2 is where they're walking, Nak-jun and Heisuk are walking back to their house after we're at the Heaven Support Center. Nak-jun tells Heisuk that he has a surprise for her and close her eyes. And the surprise is that he put a big welcome sign and balloons on the side of the house to welcome her to heaven. When she opens her eyes and looks at the sign, there's a strange, beautiful woman standing by the sign. And they're both kind of surprised. Nak-jun's like, oh, do I know you? And she knows his name. And she's like, oh my gosh, I've been looking for you. And she hugs him. And of course, Heisuk is jealous because she's old. And here's this young, beautiful woman hugging her husband. And her husband's like, I don't know who you are. So, of course, Heisuk grabs their hair and is yelling at them. And you see, again, the purple grape leaves coming out of the sky. Because every time you sin in heaven, you get a grape leaf. If you get 5 grape leaves, you can be sent to hell. So, you're not supposed to curse. You're not supposed to pull people's hair or hurt people. That's where the scene ends. So, there's this weird woman. She's hugging Heisuk's husband. He doesn't know who she is. And Heisuk is cursing and pulling hair and endangering her soul. And that's where the story ends. So now in episode 3, we're going to pick up with what happens to Young Ye on Earth. What happens with this mysterious woman. Who's this mysterious woman? And more about life in the afterlife. So that's kind of the recap of what happened in the episode. So some discussion questions I wanted to talk about. Do you think heaven should have rules and punishments? Is heaven a place where a final destination, Or is heaven a place where we learn and we evolve and we keep moving forward? Because in this story, heaven's not the final destination. And we'll learn more about that later on. But what do you think? Should heaven be a final destination? Or is it a place we learn and we keep evolving? I don't know. I really like the house that they live in heaven. It's so pretty. It's so light and open and pretty. And I wonder, what kind of house would you build in heaven? Would you build the same house that you live in now? Would you build something? I mean, if you could have any house you want on the earth, what kind of house would you build to have in heaven? Would it be extravagant? Would it be a mansion? Would it be a house on the ocean? You know, I think that's a very interesting question. What kind of house would we live in? The other interesting thing about the episode is that they make the pets have a human form at times. I wonder if that's a good choice. Was it a good choice to have the pets be a human form? I think it's essential for the story because we want to hear the pets' perspectives. I guess you could have the pets talking, like a dog talking, like you see in many movies. They went with, no, the pets appear sometimes as humans, sometimes they appear as dogs and cats, sometimes they appear as human. But because they're human, that you can talk to them, you can have a conversation with them. They're still acting like their pet, but it's a little, there's more to communicate. Was that a good choice? Or should they just have had them appear as pets? You know, I don't know. I don't know how I feel about those questions. I like the idea. The first question answer for me is, I like the idea that you're always evolving. I like that idea that you don't necessarily end up in heaven or hell forever. Everything is evolving in the afterlife in this story. And I like that idea that even if you end up in hell, not necessarily your final destination. Heaven isn't necessarily your final destination either, and that you have chances to kind of improve and get to be a better person. And part of that is through reincarnation, which we haven't gotten to yet in the story, but it is in the story. Some people decide to be reincarnated, but I like the fact that in this story, you choose if you want to be reincarnated or not. You decide. It's 100% your choice if you want to try again and you want to live a better life. But you have to be ready to do that. So there's no timeline. It's not like you're in heaven and you have a month before you have to decide what you're going to do. It could be 100 years before you decide to reincarnate. Or it could be, your future is not necessarily, there's no timeline. It's kind of your own timeline. I kind of like that idea that nothing is permanent in the afterlife. That's my view of it personally. So what do you think? You could put in the comments kind of what you think about the story so far. I'm going to make a video on every episode. There's 12 episodes, so this is just episode 2. So I'll see you in the next video. Thank you for joining me. See you in episode 3. Bye.